Hare Saki Rasa Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Namaskara Paramahamsa Bhattacharya Ashtatara Sata Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nantakoti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namaskara Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Krishna Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vastagour Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopana Shamakun Radha Kun Gopagam Ki Jai. Vardama Dhamma Ki Jai. Sattva Dhamma Ki Jai. Navpepe Dhamma Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dhamma Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tosi Devi Ki Jai. Yagamaya Ki Jai. Gangamaya Ki Jai. Samveta Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. All glories assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. I don't need the, yes. He wants us, alright, I have a hard time seeing. I'll try. Yeah, I have a hard time.
My daughter was saying that just back to the state. So I should be
Okay, well, I'll give it tonight, you do it tomorrow. Andeham Shri Guru Shri Yuktapara Kamalam Shri Gura Vaishnavascha Shri Rupa Sagritetam Sahagana Rajugana Tadvitam Hasakilam Savinam Sadutam Parijana Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakavitascha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bandhu Jagapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Pata Kancha Garangi Radhe Vilasvare Respanu Sute Deve Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubayascha Kripa Sindhu Eva Bayascha Paditanam Pavananipayo Vaishnapayo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Sri Advaita Gadhar Sri Vasti Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now, where do we leave off at? Chapter 6, 11 and 12. Chapters Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 6, Sankhya Yoga, starting at text 11 and 12. Sucha deshe padishatpatya chitram ashanam atmana natya achit natinacharam chalyajina kusutaram tatrekaragram mana pritva yata chitina kriya upavishyashane yujayad yoga matma vishuddhaya. Translation: to practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusa grass on the ground and cover it with the deerskin and a soft cloth. The seat should neither be too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it firmly and should practice yoga by controlling the mind and the senses, purifying the heart and fixing the mind on one point. Text 13 and 14. Samam kaya shriyo grivam darayan achalam Siddhiryam Samprekeshya Nakishagram Svam Dishya Chanavalakayan Prashantanma Vigatapir Brahmachari Rate Sihitya Manasam Yamya Machito Yukta Asita Matpara. Translation: one should hold one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. Text 15. Yunjan ivam sadatmatnam yogini yatta manasya satim nirvana paranamam matsam sitam adhigachati. Translation: thus practicing control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist attains to the highest kingdom of God, or the abode of Krishna, by cessation of material existence. Text 16. Natayash natastu yogasti nachaikantam anashnata nachaita swapana celestia jagrato naiva chajuna. Translation: there is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, or Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. Text 17. Yuktahara vidharasya, yukta chetasya karmashu, yukta swapanava bodhasya, yoga bhavati dukkha. Translation: he who is tempered in his habits of eating, sleeping, working, and recreation can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. Text 18. Yara viniyatam chitam atmane evatashithate nispraha sarva kamabhayo yukta ite yuchate tara. Translation: when the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to have attained yoga. Text 19. Yata dipo nivatashto nigate sopam mahasrimita yogina yata chitasya yujata yogam atmana. Translation: as a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist whose mind is controlled remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendent self. Final text 20 through 23. Yatro paramate tritam niridam yoga sevaya yatra chaivat manat manam Pashyanatmani tashyati shukam adhyatikam yatad udi gramyam atidrayam viti yatra na chivayam shititas chaliti tatvata yan labadava chaparam labham manyate nadhikam tata Yasmin Shito na Dukanina Purnanapich Vichalate Tam Vidya Duka Sam Yoga Yogam Yoga Sam Sam Itam. Translation: the stage of perfection is called trance or samadhi. When one mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga, this is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness and enjoys himself through transcendental senses. Establishes thus one who never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Turning to text 11 and 12. Translation: to practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and lay kusha grass on the ground and then cover it with deerskin and a soft cloth. The seat should neither be too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. Yogis should then sit on it firmly. and should practice yoga by controlling the mind and the senses, purifying the heart, and fixing the mind on one point. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada. Sacred place refers to places of pilgrimage. In India, the yogis, the transcendentalists, or the devotees all leave home and reside in sacred places such as Prayag, Mathura, Vrindavan, um, Hirkesha, and Hardwar, and in Ganges flow. Always said. We're in solitude place yoga with sacred rivers like Yamuna and the Ganges flow. But often this is not possible, especially for Westerners. The so-called yoga societies in big cities may be successful in earning material benefit, but they are not at all suitable for actual practice of yoga. One who is not self-controlled and whose mind is not undisturbed cannot practice meditation. Therefore, the Puran Naradiya Purana, it is said that in the Kali Yuga, the present yuga or age, when people in general are short-lived, slow in spiritual realization, and always disturbed by various anxieties, the best means of spiritual realization is chanting the holy name of the Lord. Harir Nama, Harir Nama, Harir Nama Veya Kevalam. Kalu Nasti Eva Nasti Eva Nasti Eva Gata Anyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. And especially in this day and age, in the age of Kali, previous ages, he had a much longer lifespan, much greater intelligence, much greater memory, in previous yugas, to be able to go out and find a secluded place and meditate and spend 100 years, 1,000 years, 50,000 years getting your yoga perfected. We no longer have that luxury in the age of Kali. Age of Kali, we have our lifespans shortened tremendously to about, average of less of 120 years. And 120 years, there's a very few rare that make it that long. Most of us are living, until between the 60s and 80s. A lot of people have seemed to be passing during that time. And, this kind of sometimes have this, idea of this modern day age is like, oh, I want to live to a ripe old age. There's always, the older you get, the more miseries that come. Body starts to break down. That's why we got to get our spiritual practice in order early on. We can't wait till our ripe old age to, get our spiritual practice in order, because generally by the time you're into the ripe old age, your intelligence is shortened. There's all kinds of things going on with the body that you didn't have to experience when you were younger. So getting your sadhana straight, getting your rounds done, doing your studies early on is important, because your minds might not always be there as you get older. In the stage of Kali, it's not recommended to go out to a secluded place and try to meditate. I mean, most it sounds like a great idea, but most people don't realize, the difficulties that come with finding a secluded place, somewhere out in the forest, somewhere out in the wilderness. You got to contend with Mother Nature, with the rain and the clouds and the weather, and, the creatures that are out there in the forests. I spent some time up there in Alaska, and we had all kinds of animals out there.
You know, we had black bears, we had, grizzly bears, we had polar bears out there. And, you also had foxes, wolves, mountain lions. We had all kinds of animals out there, and a lot of them would like to have you for a meal if they found you out wandering in the wilderness alone. Um, Plus, not to mention all the different kinds of bugs you come across. Some bugs are poisonous, some bugs, just torment you to no ends. I mean, mosquitoes are just horrible during during the summer season there. Depends which area that you were in. As soon as you walked out, you'd just be swarmed with, thousands of mosquitoes, you know, coming at you for your blood. But yeah, finding a secluded place out of the wilderness is sounds like a romantic idea, but it's far from especially in this age of Kali, ideal to try to find God out in a secluded place, trying to find your yoga practice out there in a secluded place. Once you're out there, you still have to worry about food and water. How are you going to get these supplies out there? Further you go out, the more stuff you have to haul back and forth. If you find a nice place out on the mountainside, takes you 2 hours to hike up to it, and you got to carry your stuff up there with you. If you can try to do this in the modern age, you just can't go up there with nothing. You could try. You could get thirsty real fast. You're going to go hungry. Bad weather's going to show up, and you didn't bring any extra clothes, so you're going to freeze to death. So in this age of Kali, we have this wonderful system that that was established by Prabhupada. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness, where we have these wonderful temples that we can go to as our sacred place. We no longer need the old yoga system of trying to meditate perfectly. We have a much superior system in bhakti yoga and devotional service. Keeping our mind on Krishna at all times. We'll move on to text 13 and 14. One should hold one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. The goal of life is to know Krishna, who is situated within the heart of every living being as Paramatma, the four-handed Vishnu form. Yoga process is practiced in order to discover and see this localized form of Vishnu, and not for any other purpose. The localized Vishnu Murti is the plenary representation of Krishna, dwelling within one's heart. One who has no program to realize this Vishnu Murti is uselessly engaged in mock yoga practice and is certainly wasting his time. Krishna is the ultimate goal of life, and the Vishnu Murti situated in one's heart is an object of yoga practice. To realize this Vishnu Murti within the heart, one has to observe complete abstinence from sex life. Therefore, one has to leave home and live alone in a secluded place, remaining seated as mentioned above. One cannot enjoy sex life daily at home or elsewhere and attain a so-called yoga class and thus become a yogi. One who has to practice controlling the mind and avoiding all kinds of sense gratification, of which sex life is the chief, and the rules of celibacy written by a great sage, Yagava, Yagavakla, oh geez, my pronunciation is terrible. Yagava, well, yeah, it said, Kamana Manasya Voka Shavasha Hatsu Shavada Shavatra Matuna Taigo Brahmacharyam Prachayasate. The vow of brahmacharya is meant to help one completely abstain from sex indulgence and work, words and mind at all times, under the circumstances and in all places. No one can perform correct yoga practice through sex indulgence. Brahmacharya is taught, therefore, from childhood when one has no knowledge of sex life. Children at the age of 5 are sent to the Gurukula, or the place of the spiritual master, and the master trains the young boys in the strict discipline of becoming brahmacharis. Without such practice, no one can make an advancement in any yoga, whether in dhyana, or bhakti. One who, however, follows the rules and regulations of married life, having sexual relationship only with his wife, and that also under regulation, is also called brahmachari. Such a restrained household of brahmacharya may be accepted in the bhakti school, but the jnana and dhyana schools do not admit even the household of brahmacharis. They require complete abstinence without compromise. In the bhakti school, a householder brahmachari is allowed controlled sex life because the cult of bhakti yoga is so powerful that one automatically loses sexual attraction being engaged in the superior service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Vishaya vinivatante arashya dihina rasa varjam raso pi ashya param vishva nivatate. Whereas others are forced to restrain themselves from sense gratification, a devotee of the Lord automatically refrains because of superior taste. Other than the devotee, no one has any information of that superior taste. Vigata be one cannot be fearless unless one is fully in Krishna consciousness. The conditioned soul is fearful due to his perverted memory, his forgetfulness of his eternal relationship with Krishna. The Bhagavatam says, Vayam divitya nivedashatya chiyad ishad apetasya viparya shimati Krishna. Krishna consciousness is the only basis for fearlessness. Therefore, perfect practice is possible for a person who is Krishna conscious. And since the ultimate goal of yoga practice is to see Lord within, a Krishna conscious person is already the best of all yogis. The principles of the yoga system mentioned herein are different from those of the popular so-called yoga societies. A lot of this was talking about refraining from the sex indulgences, from sex life. We live in a modern age where, especially here in the US, and I'm not sure about other parts of the world, but it's really blasted over the TV waves and movies and, through the radio and through the newspapers and through magazines, about the conditional sex life. Because growing up, you're trying to get a good education. You get your good education so you can get a good job, so you can get a good house, so you get a nice car, so you can attract a nice woman. Everything is kind of is based, especially here in America, is beginning is based is at the sex life. Men just don't go out and get a super nice fancy car without, expecting, women to, to look like, oh, he's got a nice car. And men don't generally get the nicest suits and nicest clothing without wanting to attract the other, without wanting to attract the female. And vice versa. Females don't generally go out, get the nicest clothes, the nicest dresses, nicest, jewelry, perfume, without the sense of they're trying to attract the man. So very much everything in our society these days is based off of sex indulgence. And this is where we can lose a lot of people, when they first walk through the temple doors and realize, oh, wait, we're not supposed to have sex. It's like, well, householders, if it's, to bring, Krishna conscious children into the world, that's okay. If that's what it's for. But we should not be so indulgent in illicit sex. This age of Kali, we've pretty much come into a very fallen world to where sex is to the point these days that, hey, you have the consequences of having sex. You become pregnant, but you don't want the pregnancy, so we have this wonderful alternative called abortion. So we could kill the baby before it's born. That's how destructive this indulging into illicit sex has become. You're killing off innocent life that has been brought into this world through illicit sex. So a yogi abstains from these things, abstains from illicit sex for spiritual advancement. In Krishna consciousness, we abstain from that for spiritual advancement, but at the same time, there's a time and place for everything. With grihastha household life, that sex is allowed because it's meant to bring Krishna conscious children into the world. That's when it's allowed. It's not anything can be used in the service for Krishna. It's about how we're using our senses and how we're using things in this world. Any questions on that area? Yeah, microphone over there.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I thought that it was especially nice how it spoke about how Bhakti Yoga is, it's the only yoga system in which we're saying that the cult of Bhakti is so purifying and so strong that even a brahmachari householder can be admitted into that school. So I was wondering if you could talk about why it's so purifying in comparison to these other schools of yoga and how it's actually, like that.
Well, one is why it's so purifying. This is what the recommended yoga for this current age is. The age of Kali, the current yuga that we're in is recommended. Previous yugas, you had the lifespan, you had the intelligence to be able to practice the other yogis. Those were more ideal at the time. But in this age of Kali, we have such a short lifespan to get to try to get our yoga practice perfect. Bhakti yoga is the highest pinnacle of all the yogis. Essentially, all the other yogis are supposed to lead to Bhakti yogi. All these other yogis, you're supposed to arrive at Bhakti yogi as you get those perfected. But here, by lunging into devotional service to Krishna, transforming our mind and our senses to serve Krishna. It's interesting thing about our senses is that how could I put it? There's only a very small, limited spectrum that we can sense. From light waves, there's only a small spectrum of light waves that we can actually see. There's only, from sound waves, there's only a small spectrum of decibels that we can hear. And even our sense of touch, there's a very small spectrum that we can actually feel. So when it comes down to it, there's unlimited sound waves out there that we can't hear. There's unlimited light waves out there that we can't see, and there's unlimited things out there that we can't feel. And so Bhakti Yoga, is that way to transcend our senses. When we can't trust our own senses because we only get a very small portion of what of the world around us. We only get a small sense of what the world is around us. So I'm trying to think of where I was going with that. But trusting our senses in is trusting our senses is not the way to go. We can't trust our own senses. That's why we need direction of a spiritual master, direction of the charyas, the scriptures, the sutras. My mind's kind of racing today.
If I may, it's I liked that point about how we have limited senses, but bhakti, purifies them and takes us above the designations, and therefore, if even you're married, it doesn't matter because it's beyond material designations. That's what I'm getting from what you're saying. So it purifies one from from all those designations.
Move on to text 15. Thus, practicing control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendental attains to the kingdom of God, or the abode of Krishna, by cessation of material existence. Purport. The ultimate goal in practicing yoga is now clearly explained. Yoga practice is not meant for attaining any kind of material facility. It is to enable the cessation of all material existence. One who seeks an improvement in health or aspires after material perfection is no yogi, according to Bhagavad Gita. Nor does cessation of material existence entail one's entaining into the void, which is only a myth. There is no void where within the creation of the Lord, rather the cessation of material existence enables one to enter into the spiritual sky, the abode of the Lord. The abode of the Lord is also clearly described in the Bhagavad Gita as that place where there's no need of sun, moon, or electricity. All the planets in the spiritual sky are self-illuminated like the sun in the material sky. The kingdom of God is everywhere, but the spiritual sky and the planets thereof are called Param, Dhamma, or superior abodes. Consummate yogi who is perfect in understanding Lord Krishna, as is clearly stated herein, Mat Chitta, Mat Para, Mat Siddhatnam, by the Lord himself, can attain real peace and can ultimately reach his supreme abode, the Krishna Loka known as Goloka, Vrindavan. In the Brahma Samhita, it is clearly stated, Goloka eva nivashyate akilatma bhuta, that the Lord, although residing always in his abode called Goloka, is the all-pervading Brahma and the localized Paramatma. As well by a dint of his superior spiritual energies, no one can reach the spiritual sky or enter into the internal abode of Vaikuntha, Goloka Vrindavan. Of the Lord without the proper understanding of Krishna and his plenary expansion, Vishnu. Therefore, person working in Krishna consciousness is the perfect yogi because his mind is always absorbed in Krishna activities. Savaimana Krishna Paravanditayo. In the Vedas, we also learn Tameva Vidat itum trityum ete. One can overcome the path of birth and death only by understanding the Supreme Personality Godhead Krishna. In other words, the perfection of yoga system is the attainment of freedom from material existence and not some magical jugglery or gymnastic feats to be full innocent people. Bhakti Yoga is the supreme of all yogis. I'm sure that many of you have seen all these other types of self-proclaimed gurus out there teaching their yoga classes. Come on in. We got this nice studio, floor mats, and air conditioned place, and we practice our stretches. But it's just superficial. It's just an exercise at that point. You have to be very careful about who you're learning yoga from. Because you're learning from the wrong people, they can drag you down to the depths of hell. They can drag you down with them. Especially a lot of these self-proclaimed gurus that you find out on the internet all the time. So you got to be very careful about who you're taking your teachings from, who you're learning from. That's why Krishna consciousness, ISKCON movement, is such a powerful movement, because we have our acharyas, we have our bona fide spiritual masters that, that have been ascended down all the way through this movement. This param system is our system. This is our safe system. This is how we know that our teachings are coming from bona fide spiritual master. They're not a part of the system. They're not bona fide. If you want to learn Bhakti Yoga, you want to be part of ISKCON, this is the system to go from, through this param system. Otherwise, you're kind of taking your chances on being dragged down to the depths of some hellish worlds by going out and finding these get rich quick gurus, or these gurus that are selling ultimate happiness, that send them $1,000, and they'll send you a mantra. You want to be cheated, there's plenty of gurus out there that's going to cheat you. But Bhakti Yoga, this is the highest platform of yoga, especially in the age of Kali. This is where this is our easiest way back to Godhead. Text 16. There's no possibility of one becoming a yogi or Arjuna if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. Purport. Regulation of diet and sleep is recommended herein for the yogis. Too much eating means eating more than is required to keep the body and soul together. There's no need for men to eat animals because there is an ample supply of grains, vegetable fruits, and milk. Such simple foodstuff is considered to be the mode of goodness according to the Bhagavad Gita. Animal food is for those in the mode of ignorance. Therefore, those who indulge in animal food, drinking, smoking, and eating food, which is not first offered to Krishna, will suffer simple reactions because of eating only polluted things. Bhujante te tva agam papa ye bhajanti atma karnat. Anyone who eats for sense pleasure or cooks for himself, not offering his food to Krishna, eats only sin. One who eats sin and eats more than is allotted to him cannot execute perfect yoga. It is best that one eat only the remnants of foodstuff offered to Krishna. A person in Krishna consciousness does not eat anything which is not first offered to Krishna. Therefore, Only the Krishna conscious person can attain perfection in yoga practice, nor can one who artificially abstains from eating, manufacturing his own personal process of fasting, practice yoga. The Krishna conscious person observes fasting as is recommended in the scriptures. He does not fast or eat more than is required, and he is thus competent to perform yoga practice. One who eats more than required will dream very much while sleeping and must be consequently sleep more than is required. One should not sleep more than 6 hours daily. One who sleeps more than 6 hours out of 24 hours is certainly influenced by the mode of ignorance. A person in the mode of ignorance is lazy and prone to sleep a great deal. Such a person cannot perform yoga. I find it interesting. It talks about, how some people come up with their own diets and their own fasting programs. One of the things that's especially in the modern day is the vegan diet, where there's no animal fats whatsoever, milk or cheeses or anything like that. And it might work for some, but just from coming from the medical field, and seeing the results of those kinds of diets over the long term, a vegan diet, especially if it's not well controlled, can end up with severe blood disorders. And there's a lot of severe side effects from, having a diet extreme like that, from blood disorders to nerve damage. Um, you don't usually find long-term vegans for very long, because generally there's about a 7-year period. They're feel really good for about 7 years. Then about past that 7-year period, that's when they start finding all these other kind of health problems that's arisen from the lack of nutrients that they were supposed to be getting. Um, we have a wonderful system through the Vedic system already. It's a vegetarian diet, but we also utilize milk products, butter, cheeses. That helps, gives us their essential amino acids and whatnot. There's crazy diets out there these days. There's one fad out there I remember seeing on the internet, is that they only eat meat. They won't eat any vegetables or grains or anything else, and they're just only eating meat. There's other diets that they're only eating raw things. But we don't need to experiment. We already have a great diet plan. Through prasadam. What's being offered to Krishna. It's all the fresh produce, fresh grains, fresh fruits. We got a wonderful, wonderful prasadam program. That's our fasting. We fast. We only eat prasadam and feast. Yeah. That's our time for today. Bhagavad Gita ki jai.